Specifically to the meat story, there are kind of three elements that get thrown out there, which is meat is damaging to our health, it's unethical to eat meat, and meat is injurious to the environment. And there are truths and falsehoods to all of that. And the irony is that the health piece is probably the most dubious. Like, it's the easiest one to unpack. And a good example of that is that most of the rest of the world, Europe in particular, they consider it child abuse to feed children or infants a vegan diet because they recognize it as being very dangerous for developmental milestones. Once you are finished growing, once you're pretty much an adult, then they're like, okay, do whatever you want to do. But in the United States, the American Council of Dietetics says that vegan and vegetarian diets are appropriate for all stages of the life cycle. And there's really no data to support that. Like, there's no good reason to support that, particularly for children. So, I think it's important for people to just recognize that it's almost this game of whack-a-mole. The ethics will be brought up. You start addressing ethics, and then the health will be brought up. You start addressing health, and then the environment is brought up, and then you have to address that. But interestingly, they all kind of dovetail together. And once you understand, assuming that we're right, like assuming that what we're saying in the book is correct, that it's going to be very difficult to properly feed humans without animal inputs. We're going to tend to overeat other things because of lack of protein. Huge tracts of the world don't have a CVS that they can go to get iron supplements and super critically extracted algal DHA so that their brains develop properly. Animal sourced food is the way to do that. Once you understand that nutrition side, and then once you appreciate the potential that properly raised grazing animals could actually reverse climate change, could expand our grasslands, could reverse desertification. Like in the film Sacred Cow, Diana details this story of several ranchers in the Chihuahuan Desert that have reversed 1 million acres of desert and converted them into grassland. And I mean, like, it's grass eyebrow deep, and folks who are native there, who have lived in the Chihuahuan area for 8 generations, they had no idea that grasses could grow there, because they've been using kind of these conventional methods of grazing, which lead to desertification. But interestingly, if you do mob grazing and move the animals in a specific way, then we can actually reverse desertification. So not only can we produce a lot of food, but we can produce more and more food as we reclaim areas that have been turned into desert. Once you look at the health part and you look at the environmental part, then the ethical consideration starts getting interesting, because it looks like we have a singular tool that could both feed humanity and potentially protect or save us from out of control climate change. And then when we juxtapose this ruminant centric, grass centric model versus the industrial row crop model, and the death that occurs on both sides of that, more animals, more insects, more beings are killed in the industrial row crop model than they are in this regenerative ag model. There's death that occurs on both sides, but in this other situation, the regenerative model, you could argue, could go on indefinitely, tens of thousands of years. There are examples of regeneratively practiced sheep herding and farms in Great Britain that are 1,000 years old. And even for those folks, they're learning, oh, we could have done this and this and this differently and been, even more productive and even better stewards of their land. But the industrial row crop food system, it's got an expiration date on it. Like, it is not going to be here 100 years from now, to say nothing of 1,000 years from now. So if humanity is still here 1,000 years from now, we're not going to be growing meat in a vat. It's not going to be hydroponics for miles. It's going to be something that looks like a mid-18th century farm with drones and satellite imaging helping to inform the way that we actually graze animals on that land.
And how does Sacred Cow play, the book and the movement really play a role in that? Because not everybody can afford organic food. And these changes, right, like turning a battleship. It's going to take a while for these changes to take place.
Yeah, and on the organic food front, like, even some people will say, if you can't afford grass-finished meat, don't eat meat at all. That's a pretty elitist position to take. Like, imagine a family of four. They're ethnic minority. They're trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they know enough that the nutrition of their children is critical to their children's success or failure. So they want to feed these kids as well as they can. Conventionally raised meat is going to be far more beneficial than any plant material that you could feed those kids. Like, at some point, you can't put more grapes or bananas or watermelon or sweet potatoes or whatever down the person without getting nutrient deficiencies relative to just giving them some good quality meat and potentially some dairy and seafood and stuff like that. So that, a doctor would never say, well, eat organic broccoli only or nothing. It's like, well, some conventional broccoli may have some challenges. Rinse it off. We'll deal with that. But I think that one part of this thing is that the people who are educated and kind of elite in this scene are elitist. They make the standard so high that then stuff that's kind of good enough, like even conventionally raised beef, spends 70% of its life on grass. Now, there's a couple of interesting observations from that. Conventionally raised meat is pretty much as nutritionally dense as grass-fed meat. The ethical considerations, the environmental considerations are very, very different. But if we just compare them side by side, there's not a huge difference in their nutritional quality.
What about the mycotoxins found in the fats from all the pesticides that the animals are eating? How do we weigh that into the decision?
So bioaccumulation is a legit concern, but it's separate from nutrition. When we talk about just nutrition, it's the essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, vitamins, minerals. And so if we look at those, that's pretty solid. Start talking about bioaccumulation, we've got a different story there. And the irony within that is that the aflatoxin problem is mainly from feeding the animals grains. The grains end up getting infected with a mold, and the aflatoxin is incredibly injurious to both the animal and to humans. But we kind of separate those out in the book, where we talk about nutrition, and then we talk about, like some of the sustainability and then some of the bioaccumulation stuff separately, just to keep it very crystal clear. We would have loved for there to have been a massive difference in the nutritional profile of grass-fed meat versus, conventional meat, because it would have played to our story much better. Like, we have people angry at us for sharing this information, but that topic
I even was triggered too when I read the book. I was like, what are they talking about? Like, because I've always seen CAFOs, and there's CAFOs here in NorCal or Norco, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I'm looking at these animals standing in their feces, and I'm like, I'll do whatever it takes to not eat them. I'll do whatever it takes to not eat them. I guess you could say that I'm in that elitist group, but I don't feel like it's elitist. I feel like it's more just, I have a heart and I care about people and I care about things done the right way.
And you do, and you should, and we should, in my opinion, also leave a little bit of room in there that, again, the folks that don't have the financial means to do this, that we should be. Here's the reality. Where is the only place in the world that grain finished meat is cheaper than grass finished meat?
Tell us.
The United States. Okay. We're it. Okay. You go to Australia, and they will highlight it. It's like grain finished meat, and it's like 30% more expensive.
Wow.
So this, again, is all an artifact of our current food system and the subsidies and the way that the tax breaks and everything hide the real costs. So again, this is like this systemic brokenness. And the unfortunate thing is that the only answer that we're really left with is eat less or no meat. And that's not addressing anything